Hello there, my beautiful book lovers. My name is Kimia, and welcome back to my book nook. So November is the Native American Heritage Month, and I thought it is the most appropriate time to really do a video about 5 of my favorite books by Native American authors. And for this collection, I have included Native Americans that are in the continent of America, so like even the groups that are in Canada as well, it's included because they are native to the land of, again, the continent, and not really just the United States per se. And so anyway, before we start with this list, I should mention that most of these books cover themes of grief, loss, a lot of violence, a lot of different mental health and issues that comes with those violences. So it is a bit of a heavy list, but I felt that it's such a necessary list to sort of, for all of us, to get a better understanding of what happened, what is happening, and how we can move forward. And so I just wanted you to have this disclaimer about all of these books. But again, that's not a reason per se to not read them. Simply, it's better to go with a little bit of a cautious instead of just fully avoid them. But in a case that you can like keep up with it, not just like you have to read it because like if it's going to hurt you too much or if it's going to be something too heavy for you, no, absolutely don't read it. But just a disclaimer. So anyway, let's start with the list. The first book, it's a book that I actually read a year or 2 years ago, and I actually mentioned it in one of the other videos. I will put it up there. That was one of my favorite books that I read, and that is Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters, if I'm not wrong. And so this book, it's about a family of Native people that they are actually from technically Canada, but during summer they come to an area in Maine, US, to work on a berry farm, to they're berry pickers. And then one summer, the youngest child, the youngest daughter, Ruthie, it's sort of goes missing. And so the entire family looks everywhere for her and try to find her and everything, but they are unable to find her, and eventually they have to go back to, I believe they're in Nova Scotia, up in Canada that they're living. And so they go, and then the story progress, and we are following this family, and we are really seeing that how this big tragic moment change and form this family through their future, and how the brother, I believe his name was Joey, he was the person that lost that last saw Ruthie. And so because of that, he's always feeling guilty that he didn't look after her sister, that he really is to be blamed for all of this, no matter how much the family really tried to talk him into understanding that it wasn't really because of him, because he was also a kid too. Sure, he was older, but still a child himself. And so because of that, he has a lot of sort of anger, sort of guilt, and that all of those things are really following him through his life and affect him as a person. And then on the other side, we are trying to figure out what happened to Ruthie and what was the story behind it. So anyway, it is a fantastic book. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to give away the story really. But I enjoyed it so much because, funny enough, I was actually on a road trip in Canada that I ended up listening to the audiobook of this book, and I wasn't planning. I didn't even know what was it about. For most of the books that I pick to read, I usually don't know what are they about. I'm like, oh, look at this beautiful cover, or oh, I like this author, or oh, I have this certain amount of time and this book is that long, so I'm going to read it. And so I didn't know that this book, it's about a family that are native of Canada. And so I felt like that was one of the reasons that I enjoyed it even more, because I was able to sort of feel a little bit more connection to the book. And the story itself, the writing, it's very beautiful, and the way that like you are seeing the struggle of this family, not only because of this tragedy, but also because of the fact that they're Native. And so how others treat them, how the society, it's sort of going about this missing child, was very fascinating. And again, it's a book that it's heavy, obviously, but honestly, like this and another book are the two that are not as heavy, because this one is like very much a story that you're following about this tragedy, but it's not too heavy about other aspect of Native Americans and the things that happen to them. So I feel it's a book that most people will be able to still enjoy it and read it and like learn about it. So that was the first book that I highly recommended. If you have not read it yet, it's a fantastic read. The story is very beautiful, and it's just a great read, honestly. Then moving on, we have A Council of Dolls by Mona Powers. I'm pretty sure about that. I think so, yes. This book, it's fascinating. I enjoyed it so much, but it's really hard with these books to say like enjoy it. It's not in a sense of like fun or entertainment, but in a sense of like really getting into the story and learning from it and enjoying like a good class, you know, that like sometimes when you have a good, I don't know, it could be like an English class, a history class, even a math class, that like, I don't know, if it's a certain topic that you are like listening to the teacher going on about and you're just so fascinated by like the thing that you're learning. So this book, it's one of those. This book, it's actually about 3 different women in 3 different generations, and the story is told through their dolls, the dolls that were really like connected with these 3 women. And so we have Cece, Lillian, and Cora, if I'm not wrong, and we are following these girls in, again, different stages of Native Americans and the colonists that would come. So first, for Cora's story, she is in 1826 or so, around that time period. And it is during the time that it's like right after the Indian War. And so she is not exactly afraid of white men that have come and everything, but she's also like not completely understanding that what is happening. And so her doll is sort of her support. It is like really there for her. And she's going through all of these different changes because of, again, the colonism that it's happening and the groups that are coming and everything that it's happening to the native groups. And so we're following her. Then we have Lillian, and she is a girl that is sort of practically kidnapped from her family, and it's sent to one of those Indian schools, you know, to be civilized and all of that. And we are seeing the horror and everything that's happening to her, and how her doll is giving her support, and how it's just fascinating to see that how the resilience there, it's shown that no matter what is happening, and in no sense it's something that like, you know, like it is okay for all of those horrible things to happen to a person, because like, you know, it will bring out the good in you and it will bring out resilience. Technically it should not happen, and it should not be needed for those things to happen. But anyway, I'm getting away from the story. So that is about Lillian and her struggles. And then with Sissy, she is, I believe, in 1920s or so. And for her, she gets this doll as a Christmas present, and she, the doll is like whispering words of kindness to her. And so these 3 dolls, again, like they are some sort of like, you can say like spirit. They're like living, like, you know, like and not that they're technically living per se, but in a sense of that is spiritual emotions and feelings that they bring to these three girls to go through all of the experiences that they're going through. And so I was very fascinated by this book, the storytelling, the way that you're seeing everything that's happening through the lens of the dolls, and the good and bad sort of the story is that because they are young, a lot of things that happen to them, they don't fully understand. And since we are seeing these things through the dolls, through the little girls, they don't really comprehend. And so they're not telling you technically just because they don't understand what's going on. But you as the reader, if you have also like a bit of knowledge or like understanding of the history, you can sort of pinpoint things that like what exactly is going on and what is happening. And so to me, that was also like another point of it that was very fascinating, to sort of see the world of all of these violence and the horror that's happening through the lens of kids, and really realize that how heartbreaking honestly it is that because like violence is bad, that's, but when it's happening to a child, it's like tripled 10 times worse, simply because it is like happening to a person that it's fully not understanding why it's happening, what is happening, and so what to do about it. And so anyway, it's a fantastic book. Again, it's a little heavy, but not too heavy in a sense that you are not told everything simply because the child doesn't understand, but still the topics that are covering, it's heavy enough that you should go a little bit, be cautious with it. But it's a fantastic read and I highly recommend it. Next, to sort of light up the mood a little bit, I will go with one of my all-time favorite books that I think I have talked about it so many times, and that is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. I love this book so much. The way that this book touched my heart, I could not say. Like, it just changed me so much, and I am so grateful for it. And again, this was another book that I was unsure that what is it or what not. But when I was in Barnes and Nobles, I saw that like it was on the like one of the tables that had like like our picks or something, I think. And I was like, oh, like this looks interesting, and it's just a must read. Honestly, it's fantastic. So this book, I talked about it so much. Miss Kimmerer, she is a scientist and also a Native American. And so she is bringing these two sides of her together to tell us and show us how important our relationship with planet Earth is, and how much we should appreciate it, and how much we can learn from Mother Nature, because it is the oldest being that have ever existed and have existed through a lot of different things that like Ice Age and all of that thing happened, that every living died, but planet Earth continued with it. Mother Nature continued and stayed. And so it is very important to learn those lessons from her planet. And honestly, the writing, it's the biggest, the most important point of this book, simply because it's so poetic, despite the fact that, again, it's a book that has elements of science. Like anything that it's talked about and touched on, it is something that it's bringing in points from science, from the native language and native knowledge, that it's it's like there. But the writing, it's so poetic that makes you feel that you're reading just a book, a fiction, a story. And that's the reason that I fell in love with it so much, and I love it so much. And the reason that I feel like it's such an important read, honestly, it's that because it will, or I hope, that it will bring back that joy of being on this planet Earth, and to sort of appreciate everything that it gives us, the gift that it's giving us, without really asking for anything in return. Like with everything that's around us, trees, grass, sky, water, oxygen, all the other beings like fish, birds, like any other mammals, or anything that it is really that are sort of giving us the gift of being alive and living and continuing living, and how important it is that we appreciate it and acknowledge that this is the gift that it's being given to us, and we should be good beings and return the gifts in a different way. And so anyway, it's a fantastic read. I highly recommend it to sort of give it a try if you want to learn a little bit more about the native knowledge about the land and those arts that are going to be extinct pretty soon all around the world, honestly, you know, like because like our grandparents or our great grandparents, they all had some knowledge that a lot of them were missing simply because, like, you know, we're like, oh no, like that's like, you know, wishy-washy, or like that's backward or doesn't work anymore or anything. But the thing is, like, no, a lot of those things were there because they were the answer for centuries. And sure, yes, with like medicine or the new technology, a lot of things has improved and changed, but that does not mean that the old ways are always like wrong or won't work or unnecessary. So anyway, it's a fantastic book. Give it a try. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And so yeah, it's a fantastic book. Then we have The Seed Keeper by Diana Wilson. This book, it's about another sort of family and their traumas and everything that happened to them. And so the story follows different characters and different timeline in a generation of this family. And we start with Rosalie. She is telling the story of how her great niece came back to them after she was put into the foster care system when she was like 12, I believe. And that child is Darlene. And so she is a child that was a mixed race. She had a French mother and a native father, and so because of that there was always this sort of disconnect in her, like in a lot of mixed race families, that like sometimes the children feel that they're not really like the mother and not really like the father. They're sort of a mix, but they never really belong to any of those groups completely. And for her, it's like she's not French enough, but she's also not native enough. And so that creates this conflict for her. And she's trying to like figure that out. And then by the time that she's 12, her dad dies, and so she's put into the foster care, and everything that happens, you know, during the like that whole experience, and like she's trying to sort of get out that system and everything that's going on with that. And so the main story, while it's going with this, it's also about seeds and farming in general, and the relationship that those seeds brings with not only us and the nature, but also this family, and the fact that like, you know, that like those practices that comes from the native practices to like to this day, and everything that changes for them. And so it's a fantastic book. This one, it's it's one of those books that like some people might not like it simply because it jumps between different timeline and also different perspective. I honestly don't mind. I enjoy when we have a couple of different points of view when it's done right, which this is the case for this book. Because like sometimes I have books that like I have read books that are like by different point of view, but they all sound the same, which makes no sense, you know, because like I do not sound like my own sister, you know, like we have different ways of thinking and doing things and stuff. And so with this book you don't feel that, like even though this story it's jumping from one to another, you feel the like the shift in the tone. And so when it's done right, I don't mind it. But some people, they don't really enjoy that. They sort of find it hard to follow, especially because there is the jump in time. So I should say that. But overall, I feel it's a beautiful book, and it has a lovely story, and it shows that how all of these, like, again, old traditions can bring back a family together. So if you're interested in that, I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I did. And then last but not least, we have, forgive me for pronunciation, I believe it's Keetsahnak, and it's our Missing and Murder Indigenous Sisters. So this book, this is the heaviest book in this entire list. Honestly, I feel it's a collection of stories by different authors that are telling the stories of themselves or family members of the Indigenous women that went missing or were murdered. and it's pointing out everything that started from, like, again, by the colonists that came and the violence that they brought to this day, to the, like, the racism, to the sexism that it's happening towards this group, and again, especially the Indigenous women. And so this book, it's really trying to show that how, which we know now, that like the trauma really follows a family, a lineage. It just stays, even if the trauma was not really yours. It could be even your great-grandparents, but it's still within your DNA, and it sort of continues until it finally reaches a point that can heal. But when the system, it's not giving you the things that you need to heal, to move on, it makes it so much harder. And so this book, again, it covers a lot of heavy topics, but I found it such an important read simply because, and this book really focused on Indigenous women and group in Canada. And so it is very fascinating to learn about the history through the eyes of the Native group, instead of like what has been done by the white people that came to Canada, because that's a thing with history. Like, it's never fully true, simply because the winner writes the history, or I think that's something similar to that, the saying that, you know, like the person that is writing always tries to show themselves the good one, you know, they were the one that they were trying to bring the good and civilize these groups, but they never talk about the violence that happened, and like the horror that they did in those schools and everything. And so it is very fascinating, let's say. I don't really want to use the word interesting, but it's really fascinating and educational to learn about the history of how and what happened, and how also to this day, which is the sad part of it, that like still there are women that are going missing or are being murdered, but the system does not treat it similar to as if it was happening to a white woman. I mean, in general, honestly, a lot of violence that happened to women as a group has been just brushed under the rug. But when it comes to the Indigenous people, it's even more. And so it's a very necessary read. Maybe don't read it all in one sitting, for sure, but I find it very useful to know these stories, because not only this is the stories about these women, but it's also sort of talking and showing a way moving forward, that how we can go with a non-violence way to solve this issue with the system, with everything that's going on, to help and sort of improve the environment and the situation and make it proper for healing. And that's the reason I felt that I should include it in this list, because I felt that it's such an important lesson to be learned, to really point out things to us that we don't really think about or know about or pay attention to. And it's good to make you think, to sort of start to think the ways that you can help, the things that you can do. So anyway, it's a must read for those reasons, and I hope you give it a try. And with that being said, these were the books that I have picked for this list. I know that they were a little bit heavy, but honestly, I feel that like books are not always about like, you know, happy endings and all of that. We read for those, but also we read to learn. We read to sort of live in different lives. We read to live in different worlds. And these are books that can help you to connect with Indigenous people of this continent, and to sort of realize and learn things that you might have not known, not have think about or anything. Because again, like something that it's not technically affecting you, it might something that it's like, you know, you're not paying attention to it, but when you learn about it, you will pick up on that more and you will pay attention to it more. So I hope you do give these books a read because of those reasons. And so I hope you enjoy this video. Until the next time, happy reading.